Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, thank you. It's really my great honor to be here tonight. But before I begin, there are a couple of people I'd like to introduce. As you know, the Senate's in about 8 months a year, and so I'm back in Washington about 8 months a year. And I'm married, and my husband is here on the West Coast, and so we have a bi-coastal marriage. And I would like to introduce you to the man who's put up with it for 30 years now, my husband, Dick Blum, who's right down there, right there. And my wonderful stepdaughter, Annette Blum, who's here tonight, who's an Angelino and lives in this great city. And I'd also like to introduce you to someone that I work with. He represents the county of Los Angeles, doing what I did once in a smaller county. Well, I like to think Los Angeles is a suburb of San Francisco, but the demographics are a little different. And that is Zev Yaroslavsky and his wife, Barbara, who is right front and center at that table. I was listening to Antonio Villaraigosa, the mayor's speech, good speech, great speech, about how he felt. And I'd like to kind of tell you a little bit in my own words where I am today. And let me take you back to the beginning of the year. As many of you know, I was chairman of the inaugural ceremonies. And on January 20th, as I looked out over 2 million people jammed into a space that ran about 2 miles back to the Lincoln Memorial, I saw a crowd that was bright with hope, a huge crowd. But 2 centuries of American history flashed through my mind as I looked and saw the Lincoln Memorial far in the distance. I thought of the institutional discrimination of segregated schools, bathrooms, water fountains, and restaurants, the back of the bus, the burning crosses, the lynchings, and of course, the horrible deaths of slavery. And I needed no further proof to know that we live in a country where extraordinary change is possible. But the transformation that allowed Barack Obama to become our 44th president did not happen quickly or painlessly. It was the result of an unyielding struggle that endured for generations, and no one knows that better than Julian Bond, who is here with us tonight. Remember, 50 years ago, it was still against the law for African Americans to eat at the same lunch counter as whites. Yet 2 weeks ago, I attended a White House dinner held for chairmen and ranking members of both the House and the Senate at the invitation of a president who is the son of a marriage that was still illegal in over a dozen states when he was born. And let me say this, the President and the First Lady are marvelous hosts. The ease and grace with which they moved in the very formal setting of the White House made it hard for anyone to believe that racial discrimination was once, in fact, the law of this land. So we know that great change is possible in our lifetimes, and that change is a constant. It can come quickly and easily, over time, or with great struggle. And when it is finally accomplished, it can appear as if it was always the case, as it was on that night in the White House, as I watched Barack Obama and Michelle Obama, the President of the United States and the First Lady of the United States. My heart sank when I learned that Proposition 8 had carried a majority of voters in our great state last November. This loss despite the fact that our state had simultaneously and overwhelmingly voted for change, and recent polls had indicated that a majority of voters supported equal marriage rights, was very surprising. But a great deal of money had been spent to distort marriage equality and to cast these equal rights as something dangerous to children and to all marriage. Without a doubt, this is a setback, but the final verdict has not been rendered. The struggle will go on, and I believe we will be victorious. I can't tell you when or how. It may take another year or 5. It may take another ballot initiative. But I firmly believe that equal marriage rights will one day proudly be the law of this great state. Just this past week, the field poll, now this is a poll that those of us in public office watch. Actually, it's of voters. It's a pretty conservative poll. And what it showed, that the voters are evenly divided, just about. 48% support marriage, while 47% oppose it, and 5% are undecided. That's the battle line. I believe the poll is good news, and I believe that support will continue to build over time. And I want to tell you about my optimism and why, because it mirrors my own personal evolution on this subject, my feelings and observations, and the changes that I've had over the last 40 years. Over the course of these decades, I've seen this community be born and come into a life of its own. And I've seen with my own eyes, up close and personal, the happiness, the joy, and the stability that marriage has brought with it. I've seen couples adopt children who otherwise would have spent their youth moving from foster home to foster home. Hillary Rosen, who was going to introduce me tonight, is a good friend. And as you know, she adopted 2 children who most likely would have gone from foster home to foster home. And I've watched children find loving homes and secure family relationships. And I believe this is a good thing indeed. As Californians come to know the 18,000 couples married since June of last year, more will see them as loving, stable marriages between 2 people willing to make a lifelong commitment to share the good and the bad of life. And above all, life is so short. And what's wrong with people being just plain happy together? I remember in 1969, during my first campaign for supervisor of San Francisco, being the only candidate to appear before a gay organization. And once elected, I was the first public official in San Francisco to appoint an openly gay man as my executive assistant. I remember in 1981, as mayor, when news of the AIDS crisis for the first time was revealed to me following a department head meeting by our Director of Public Health, Dr. Merv Silverman. And then San Francisco became the first city to develop a program to meet the enormous challenge of AIDS. And I might say it became a model for the nation. But that year, I went back to the Conference of Mayors and tried to organize an AIDS task force on the East Coast. But virtually no mayor would come to the table. No mayor at that time would sit down to discuss it. But that was then, and this is now. And look how far things have come. And I was there, president of the Board of Supervisors, when Harvey Milk was elected. And I was the one that found his body in a small City Hall office on the second floor when he died 30 years ago. All those decades, all the tough times, the difficult times, the survival, the coming together of a community, its growth, its maturation. And then came May 15th, 2008, and it was a banner day. The California Supreme Court, in a courageous 4-3 decision, stated these words: "The basic legal rights to marry are so integral to an individual's liberty and personal autonomy that they may not be eliminated or abrogated by the legislature or by the electorate through the statutory initiative process." Along with other points, the court issued a strong and unequivocal opinion that clearly stated that the Constitution of the state of California guarantees equal marriage rights to all. Today, that same court, because of Proposition 8 and an effort to take these rights away, that same court is pondering whether Proposition 8 is a revision or an amendment, whether the right to marry stands or falls, whether 18,000 marriages that took place between June 16th and November 4th of last year are obliterated, and whether the hopes and dreams of this community are made whole. Until this question is settled, it's up to you to continue to press the case, united, as you march forward in dignity. We simply cannot put our faith in a positive outcome. We must hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. I know from experience that it's tough to lose. I've lost some, but time doesn't stop, and it's on your side. Because like me, like my views do change as people learn, know, and understand, as they see the smiles that were on the film that we saw earlier today, as they see the happiness, as they watch children have a home. People change, and that's the change we need, just about 5% more. So today I say to you in this room, continue the support and ability to speak in a unified, direct, and strong voice. You have come a very long way in the 40 years I have watched, but the journey is not finished. We must persevere until the day when acceptance triumphs prejudice. I will support you in this quest, and it will happen. Thank you and good night. Thank you very much.